Hey, welcome to the Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and this is a show where I interview the movers and shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, this episode is powered by a prop tech innovation that is flipping the script on how developments are visualized and sold. No outdated 3D models, no guesswork, just a faster route from concept to completion, often cutting between 8 and 12 weeks off of project timelines. Want to see it in action? Reach out to me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Secure or check out the show notes below. So on today's show, I welcome Andrew Edwards. He is a chartered architect and director of EDG Architecture in Yorkshire, known for designing bespoke, lifestyle-led homes with transparent, fixed fee model and a rock-solid reputation for personal, highly attentive service. Andrew, it is an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Welcome. Thanks for taking time out to have a chat with me. And shall we dive right in, shall we?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, you're more than welcome to start off with. First question. This is a question I ask absolutely everybody on my show because I love the different answers. So, if time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time when you first started your career in architecture, what advice would the person that you are now, tell your younger self?
That's a great question. Okay, so I think for me, don't assume that architecture is going to be fun, glamorous, well paid, all of the things you expect it to be all the time. I'm not trying to sound negative there. That's just 50% probably of what we do is compromise.
Yeah,
We're all designers,
yeah,
we have a real passion for design, and we do a long time at uni to teach us to be good designers. And a lot of what we do is then compromise because of cost and budget. We compromise because of
yeah,
policy, because of neighbors. A lot of it is just seeing your design eaten away at, really.
yeah,
So yeah, I think my big thing is don't expect it to be, as I say, fun in that sense. Um,
yeah,
it can be. Similarly with salaries, you do 7 years of uni and you come out on 30 grand if you're lucky. It's not the massive salary that everybody expects it to be for that length of time at uni. There are ways to make real cash in architecture. You go for one of the big London firms, you do your time.
mm,
You pivot into something like becoming a design manager instead of an architect, or you go on your own. That's the other option, really.
yeah.
Um,
But it's
yeah,
like anything in life, Andrew. You get your ups and downs. You get your really highs and your really lows. Things go wrong. It's just like anything, really. And having that sort of self expectation to say,
yeah.
it's not always going to be sunshine and roses. There's always going to be something that may, come and kick you up the butt now and again.
It's not. And I've probably made that sound very negative there, but if I look at it on the other side, the difference, the real world difference that I can make to somebody's personal life by what I do to their home is massive, and
Mm,
the sense of the sort of sense of congratulations, or that rewarding feeling that you get from doing that is massive,
yeah,
and that is what keeps you going. Really, you do persevere to get to the end and get to what that client wants and what makes a difference to them.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of the time, you do have to just take your personal emotion out of it, really.
yeah, definitely. And sort of that pivots quite nicely into the second question, really, because you've built a reputation for helping homeowners turn those vague aspirations into fully formed, lifestyle-driven designs. So when clients first come to you, they're unsure of what they want. What's the process that you have for extracting clarity and turning it into a concept that they can actually visualize?
Okay. Um, yeah, so I do have a bit of a process. I mean, my first question for every client, we'll always try and have a conversation with them before we go and meet them. And my first question is always, have you done anything like this before? And do you know what to expect from working with an architect? Um, I'd say most people say no. Most people haven't done anything like this before, and it's the first time for them.
Yeah,
Um, the reason I ask that is more just to, I suppose it's if they have done something like this before, it's what went well, what went wrong.
Yeah.
Tell us what worked for you, what didn't, and what you expect from me as your architect. If they haven't, it then lets me know that I need to do a little bit more hand holding than I would otherwise. Um, and it just lets me suss out the client a little bit as well. Because if you have worked with another architect and you're not using them again, why is that?
Yeah.
You know, what went wrong, or are you potentially a difficult client for me? And I think it's a big part of what I do and why I do it is I'd rather do the right project with the right client at distance than do the wrong project locally to me, or
Yeah.
I'd quite happily say no to a project if I didn't think I was the right person for it.
Sure.
And I think that is key to building that relationship with your clients, because they are going to be you're going to be in each other's lives for the next 2 or 3 years probably.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to be able to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the first thing. The next thing I always kind of do is we'd always then go and do a visit. And I'd say my process for a new build is different to an extension project.
Yeah.
So an extension will always, we'll go in, meet the person. I'll always let them take the lead and say, walk me around your home, tell me what the problems are, and tell me what you need it to achieve. So, is that, it's only 3 bedrooms. We need a 4th bedroom. That's fairly obvious. But then if they say to me, the kids come in and they kick their shoes off everywhere, well, instantly that tells me maybe we need a boot room, or
Yeah.
do you have a utility room at the moment? It's just in the wrong place in the house,
Yeah.
and what can we look to do with that? And then other questions like, do you work from home? We always dig into the lifestyle as well. So people who work from home, typically need an office or somewhere to work from.
Yeah.
And if I look at my office, for example, compared to, I don't know, an accountant, for example, I imagine an accountant needs a lot less space than I do when I've got drawings all over my desks.
Yeah.
So it's trying to really get into the nitty gritty of what that person needs.
So it's really understanding what they need, what they
Yeah,
want, what they
understand
require,
the lifestyle. Um,
what's must have and what's nice haves, that sort of
exactly
thing.
that.
Yeah.
And what would be nice if the budget stretches to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I think for a new build, it's fairly similar in the sense that the other thing we can start to add into that is the style of the building, the scale of it. The budget always comes in. That's always a big question: is have you got a number you don't want to exceed? And then we work backwards from there to say, well, actually, let's use 500 grand for argument's sake, and you want to spend 30 grand on a kitchen, and then you take off the VAT for the extension, or no VAT, obviously, if it's a new build.
Yeah.
And then all your bathrooms, all your flooring, your staircase, you get back to that basic build cost that you've got to play with, and then try and work out what sort of scale of a building you can get for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of clients, I think, come into it with rose tinted glasses, really, in that sense.
Of course. Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
there's always a little bit of managing expectations there.
Oh, definitely. So, moving on, you're not just an architect. You actually wear many hats. So, you're actively developing sites, you're doing JVs, you're operating serviced accommodation. So, how has it been on both sides of the fence? And how's that changed the way that you design, budget, and you manage the risk on the residential projects?
Uh, yes, it has. It has changed things. I wouldn't say it's drastically changed things.
Gives you
I
a
think
different perspective, though, surely.
it does. I mean, I think from a design perspective, good design always responds to the project and the site and the conditions of that. Um, and I think probably for me, what I'm quite good at is taking myself out of it, and
Mm,
putting myself in the client's shoes from that perspective, whether that's me as the client or
yeah.
the private client so we're working for. Um, I'd say what it has made me do is consider the end user
Yeah.
and the exit strategy for that site, if you like. So for a developer, what are they looking to do with it, and what are the ways to get out? Are they looking to sell? Are they looking to hold it? And then what does that change in terms of the design particulars? So
Hmm.
to give you an example of that, we have a project at the moment, which is a development that we're working on for ourselves, in the Lake District, and it's a site for, well, could have been 8 holiday homes or 6 private homes.
Hmm.
The difference being that if we did 6 private homes, each property would have its own parking space, and own driveway. If we did the 8 holiday homes, it would be a communal parking area.
Yeah.
So it was trying to strike that balance of, do we go for the extra units and potentially get a little bit more out of the site, but then we're limited to only selling them to as holiday lets, because let's be honest, if you're buying a nice premium home in the Lake District, you want to be able to park on your drive.
Yeah.
Um, and on the flip side, if we do them all the other way, and we did them all as holiday homes, then are we going to flood the market in a small town for holiday
Yeah.
homes? So we ended up doing a sort of compromise of 7 units, 5 of which are private, 2 of them are holiday homes.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
the holiday homes, you've got a slight walk from the parking area to your units, which generally holiday makers are prepared to compromise a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we think we've just got the blend right, really, which it would have been quite easy just to jump in and just go get as many units on there as possible, like a lot of developers will. But I
Yeah.
think we've kind of changed in the sense that we've looked at it more practically of what's the best mix for the site.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Excellent.
think in turn that then does manage risk, because
Yeah.
it gives developers a potential exit.
Yes, well, definitely. Yeah. So working across Yorkshire and the wider UK, you've just mentioned the different challenges of, having either holiday homes or homeowners. So what local challenges do homeowners consistently underestimate? So is it, planning? Is it the cost uncertainty? Is it all that red tape? And how do you actually help them navigate those early hurdles in the process?
It's exactly those things. Planning is without doubt the biggest hurdle in my career, as it was in our industry.
Yeah.
Some of our projects drag on for years. There's first one that jumps to mind. It was an inquiry that we actually received on Boxing Day in 2020. We submitted the first application for a new build house in the summer of 21. From memory, I think it was 11 months that took to go through planning to get refused,
Wow.
after making small change after small change after small change for the planning officer. And that should have been an 8-week application. So 11 months for what should have been 8 weeks. We then resubmitted with all of the changes that the planning officer requested. So he did his report. We picked up every single comment and dislike that he had about the scheme. And he then refused it again. And again, that was about 8 months of back and forth with little change after little change. So the second application, in his report for that one, he put a load more comments, and we looked at them and we just said, well, if we change all of those bits, we're basically back to the original design. Well, we made all of the changes, and well, I say we made all the changes. We didn't. We took the original design and we added a bay window to it and put
Yeah.
it into planning, and it was approved 6 months later.
It's
And you
just,
just think we've just gone round and round the houses to get back to where we started with a very minor change.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that we added a bay window and we changed the front elevation to stone instead of brick,
And that
and that was
took
the only
11
change.
months. So,
And it was 4 years in the end. Um,
Jesus.
so yeah, that project's on site now, due to finish anytime in the next couple of months, really.
Yeah.
But
So,
it's turned for that client, that was their dream home, and it's turned into an absolute
a
nightmare.
nightmare. Yeah.
Um,
So
but
speaking of the red tape, you mentioned planning being one of the single biggest frustrations and the legal process being painfully slow. So from
yeah.
your experience from one-off homes right the way through to multi-unit developments, what practical changes could actually speed up the system and make it less punishing for homeowners and small developers?
um, I think that's a difficult question, really, because there's a lot of very good case officers, at local authority level, and I think at times they feel that their hands are tied as well.
Mm,
So I'm not necessarily sure that it's a simple change that's needed. Yeah,
maybe a load of small incremental changes.
I think that would be more realistic. I think giving case officers a little bit more flexibility and power. They are supposed to have discretion over what they approve, but a
Hmm.
lot of them hide behind policy, and will
Yeah.
just send a generic email with policy says no. Um, I think there needs to be a little bit more discretion in there. Um, there is meant to be a presumption in favor of development,
Yeah,
unless there's a reason to refuse it. But a lot of the time, it seems to be the other way around.
yeah,
So, I think one thing that I particularly missed from when I started in architecture 16 years ago is, we used to be able to meet with case officers. You could
mm,
pay a little bit extra, go in, have a sit down meeting with them, chat it through, and look them in the whites of the eyes and come away with some actual notes, written
yeah.
down about what's needed. Um, I think that would be a positive change, bringing that back, that face-to-face interaction. Um, the other thing I think would be a positive change is, so there's something called the pre-app um, sort of application process where you submit your initial design as it was. They come back with some general comments about it before you do a full submission.
Yeah.
The problem I have with them is they're not legally binding, in the sense that the case officer can then change their decision on everything they recommended when
Yeah.
you
Right.
actually put the application in. So if there was a way to put a bit more onus on that to be, a better response than it is, I think it would be more worthwhile. Because
Yeah.
at the moment, I advise clients just put in the application and use that as the pre-app, because it costs the same, it takes just as long, and the feedback you get is written in a report that
And
goes in.
how often do you put these prelims in, and then it totally changes by the time you put in your proper planning? Is it?
It can happen. I mean, we've got projects which it's former prisoner of war camp that we're converting to housing,
Wow.
and that project we did a pre-app. I think we paid 1,800 quid for it, and the response we got was based on the wrong planning policy. And we luckily had a planning consultant involved in that project, and she ripped the local authority apart really, and they ended up redoing their pre-app
Yeah.
despite saying they wouldn't. And yeah, the second pre-app was much better. But it just goes to show, if we didn't have the planning consultant involved, or myself, and it was a client submitted on their own behalf, it probably would have been a non-starter as a project.
Yeah. So you offer full 3D design services and those photorealistic renders as part of your offerings. Now, with that homeowners increasingly wanting smoother, more tech-enabled experience, where do you actually see digital tools adding the biggest value in the architectural process over the next coming years?
It's got to be AI. I think every industry at the moment is being affected by AI, whether it's design or policy based.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think the big thing I could see in architecture is interactive walkthroughs, where we've kind of got this at the moment where you can put your headset on and walk through the building as it's modelled. But I could see AI being integrated into that, whereby you could say, actually change that staircase to this, and it would be done in an instant for you. And you almost stood in space with the client, designing it and changing it to suit their needs.
Yeah,
And I think that would be a massive change for architecture.
yeah,
I also think the big software, manufacturers, people like Autodesk, they've got to be spending tens of millions looking to integrate AI into their software, because
yeah,
something like a voice command with Autodesk, where you could say, create me a new wall type for a timber-clad dormer on a timber frame, and it's just done in an instant, would it would offer massive cost savings and time savings for me as a practitioner.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then finally, one of the things that I haven't approached anyone in the space is, you mentioned that you were actually hacked, and that was one of
yeah,
your worst experiences of your 6 years in business.
100%.
Firstly, really sorry to hear that, and what happened to you is awful. Um, but if you can you tell me what happened, and what advice would you give to other small architectural practices or developers to protect themselves from being hacked?
Yeah, it was awful. It probably could have been a lot worse as well. Um, we trying to think what it was. It was a bank holiday weekend. It could well have been Easter weekend.
Oh, wow.
We came back on the Tuesday morning and found that someone or a software was in the process of encrypting every one of our files. Um, what we found out later was it was a North Korean hacking group. It was their software. we don't know if it had been on the system for a week, a month, a year, 2 years, how long it was there. And it was just working away silently in the background, trying to hack passwords until it got in. And we found out it got in through our router.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even that we clicked anything, it was purely random. Nothing we could
Wow.
do to protect ourselves. Luckily, it only got into the server, not onto our machines, or that could have been worse. It tried to take every single file. We were trying to grab files before it could take them. We focused on getting the drones off the system because we figured that's going to be the biggest impact. And yeah, we just dragged everything onto our desktops, and then sort of later on realized actually we've got 2,000 files now called 01 proposed drawings, or which is which project, and we have no idea what. We were quite lucky that I do keep a manual backup. So once a month I would do a manual backup, but trying to figure out which projects he worked on in the last month. So we had to sit down and go through all timesheets, everything. Within those files, which drawing did we work on? Within that drawing, which bit did we change? And then recreate all that work again. It took us, I'd say it was probably the best part of a year to recover, maybe a little bit more even.
Jesus.
And it was everything. I mean, even survey notes. So that last month, any measured surveys we'd done in that month, we would scan those survey notes in onto the system, and then we were looking to see which ones have we kept the paper copies for, or which clients do we need to say I'm really sorry and do another survey because this has happened. But then throw into that our insurance then wouldn't let us tell clients we've been hacked. So how do you tell a client, sorry, I don't have your survey notes anymore, can I come and remeasure, without looking completely incompetent? So it was horrendous. I mean, I think probably for me personally, it probably cost me about 50 grand just to keep the company afloat.
Wow.
Which was worthwhile, in the sense that we're still here. I think the biggest change we made, we very quickly after that changed to a new system for backing up. So we now use a Microsoft system where we can pick any moment in time and back up to that point. So if we got hacked right now, I could back up to 10 minutes ago and have every single file. And it's been pretty horrendous, really.
I take it was probably ransomware, so they were trying to get a payment out of you so they could release. Oh man, that sucks.
So every folder where they took a file, they left a notepad file, which had click this link to get instructions on how to get your data back. Within that file was another link. Our insurance company appointed a cyber specialist on our behalf, and they looked into that link and said, if you'd clicked that, it would have started a timer whereby they become aware that you've been hacked. So at the moment, it's a completely blind attack.
So they don't know.
But as soon as you click that link, they become aware. And at that point, they give you three options: is pay us X amount, or we sell it on the dark web. We release all of your data anywhere, or increase the ransom as it was.
Oh man, that sucks.
So it was a rough 18 months really. Out of it, but it was.
I'm glad you come out the other side though, Andrew. On
a
positive note though, what is your most favorite sort of project that you've worked on? Is there anything like grand designs where you thought, I really can sink my teeth into this and it's really gonna, be a massive project? Or is there anything where you thought, this is just perfect, I love this?
I think the bits I get the biggest buzz out of, it's obviously I get a buzz out of the projects we do for ourselves, but if we're being specific to client projects, it's very much the unusual. So something like the Prisoner of War camp, where it's got a really interesting history to it, and I mean it's a completely derelict asbestos sheds basically, that we're rebuilding. but the design principles that go into it, there was a lot of design work in the background in terms of, looking at the history of how these things were built, what the
Mm,
heritage of them is, which parts of the site are important from a heritage perspective as well.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I found that a really interesting project.
nice.
It's yeah, something
Uh,
like that where it's a bit different, a bit more to it than just your
Unusual.
design as it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's pretty much all we got for today's show. Andrew, massive thanks for joining me on the show. Really good to chatting to you, learning about your experience and your insights. Of course, massive thanks to the listeners as well. Just before we sign off, Andrew, if someone wanted to know more about you, the work that you do at EDG Architecture, how can they actually get in contact with you?
uh, Either through the website, email, Instagram, just pick up the phone and give me a call. Always happy to have a chat and you know tell you my
Brilliant.
thoughts.
And I'll put your contact details if that's okay in the show notes below.
Perfect. Thank you very much,
That's
Glenn.
it. Well, that's it for today's show. If you're still wondering about that prop tech thing that I mentioned at the start, good. You should be. Drop me a message or check out the show notes below and I'll show you what early adopters are up to. Thanks for tuning in to Blueprints of Buildings. I'm your host, Glen Palmer. I was speaking with Andrew Edwards, and I will see you in the next episode.